All right, I am here. About to set up some of these videos, see what's going on in the world today. It's the weekend, I got to catch up on everything that happened. So I think I'm going to start with the White House press briefing. Load that one up. And we should get going with that one. Yep, some of my settings are a little bit off now, so I'm just kind of messing with those a little bit, but yeah, that's what I want. All right, time for our weekly White House press briefing.
Hello.
I kind of wish she would do this more often. It seems like she's been doing it like once or twice a week, where the Democrat Biden White House press briefing, what was her name? I'm blanking on her name right now. But you know what I'm talking about. She did it like 3 times a week. So, and even on the plane, she would do like interviews on the plane, even though they weren't that great. I kind of wish Caroline here would do more, but maybe she's just starting out. She's just getting going. Could be the thing that she's going to develop into as there's more information.
Good afternoon, everybody. I brought some heavy hitters in here with me today. Today marks 1 month of President Trump's return to the Oval Office, and there is no denying this administration is off to a historic start. The president has already signed 73 executive orders. That is more than double the number signed by Joe Biden and more than quadruple the number signed by Barack Obama over the same period. These executive orders have ended burdensome regulations, sealed the border, unleashed our domestic energy sector, eliminated divisive DEI from our federal government, stopped the weaponization of government, cut waste, fraud, and abuse, reinstituted America First trade and foreign policies, and ultimately restored common sense. The president also signed the Laken Riley Act into law, which ensures ICE will detain illegal aliens arrested or charged with theft or violence. As of today, the Senate has already confirmed 18 cabinet-level nominees.
I'm seeing a lot of videos on TikTok where they're like showing some mother immigrant that's being deported and how she's such a good person. Crazy propaganda is going on TikTok, and people will watch those and they're like, oh, Trump's deporting this single mother who just was coming here for like a better life, and they completely don't factor in that this person came here illegally. And I guess you could not agree with that. That's fine. But I mean, Trump's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to get these people out of here, and that's what's happening.
Which is more than at this point under the Obama administration in 2009, and more than double the pace of the Biden administration in 2021. And today we expect Kash Patel to be confirmed as the next director of the FBI. We are proud to announce that the president will host his first official cabinet meeting here at the White House next Wednesday, February 26th. In just 4 weeks, President Trump has already hosted the leaders of Israel, Japan, Jordan, and India. And next Monday, the president will host France's President Emmanuel Macron. And on Thursday, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will visit the White House as well. As you all know, over the past month, the president has taken questions from the press, all of you, nearly every single day. Sometimes on multiple different occasions in the same day.
He really has. I don't know how he does it. He's jacked up on Diet Coke and just running like crazy.
On any topic any of you wish to talk about. President Trump set the tone on this approach immediately when he took more than 12 times the questions in his first few hours in office, as Joe Biden did in his entire first week. Yesterday, we hosted a local media row here at the White House with television and radio stations from across the country that reached up to 60 million viewers and listeners. In our ongoing pursuit of transparency on this 1 month celebration, I am thrilled to bring 3 of my colleagues and our policy experts here at the White House to further recap this incredible first month of accomplishments in greater detail. We have
I really want to see some data. I don't want to just see her up here talking about things. I want to see like actual facts.
Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller, the Director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, and our National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz. I will hand it over to them. They will deliver brief remarks on the accomplishments of this administration in the first month, and then we will open it up to Q&A. When we open up the Q&A portion, I do ask, for the sake of efficiency in this room, that you direct your question to the principal you seek an answer from, and I will call on you in this room. But first, I will let them roll through their remarks, and first up, I'll turn it over to Stephen Miller.
All right, let's see what's actually going on here.
Thank you. It's great to be back. And I want to just thank you all for joining today, our 1 month celebration of the most historic opening to a presidency in American history. No president comes close to what Donald Trump has achieved over just the last 30 days. He has packed 8 years of transformative action, restoring this nation, restoring our laws, restoring fairness, restoring economic opportunity, restoring national security in just 1 month. No one in this country has ever seen anything like it. And when you look at the consequentiality and the significance and the transformative nature of the actions he's taking, it truly defies description. For example, in just one area, this nation has been plagued and crippled by illegal discrimination, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. It's strangled our economy, it has undermined public safety, it has made every aspect of life more difficult, more painful, and less safe. He has ended all DEI across the federal government. He has terminated all federal workers involved in promulgating these unlawful policies.
There's a lot of people upset about that kind of stuff. A lot of people think it's not fair.
He has ended diversity, equity, and inclusion in all federal contracting. He has restored merit as the cornerstone of all federal policy, restored the full, fair, impartial enforcement of our federal civil rights laws for the first time in generations. And he has cracked down on individuals across this government and nonprofits who have engaged in illegal racial discrimination against the American people.
Which is exactly what he said he was going to do, and he's doing it. So even if they're upset, this is what the people wanted.
This includes making clear to every educational institution in this country that ending diversity, equity, and inclusion, ending unlawful race discrimination, is a precondition of receiving federal funds. He has also saved women's sports by ending the participation of men in women's sports.
I am so for that. I don't know if y'all saw the governor of Maine and how she is trying to fight back against all this stuff, but it's just insane to me. Today on X, they found a video of her attending a basically like a trans party, I guess you would call it, where she's up there dancing with them, which that's all good and fine. I think they should be able to have their parties and everything. That's great. But you shouldn't have dudes in women's sports. I think that's just common sense, and most people probably agree with me on that.
He has ended radical gender ideology across the entire federal government, and he's pressured the private sector to also end and combat radical gender ideology. He's reestablished the scientific and biological truth that there are only 2 sexes in this country, male and female, that those are biologically based determinations. They are not based and can never be based on gender identity. That includes rooting out of the Department of Defense all DEI policies, all critical race theory, all gender madness, and once again having a military that is focused solely and exclusively on readiness, preparedness, and lethality. As I'm sure
a lot of people in the military are upset too. They just fired the Air Force's chief of staff, and apparently he was well liked. They kind of look at it like him being fired because he's black, I'd like to see Trump's comments on why he actually fired him. Is it the terrible withdrawal from Afghanistan? Are they kind of putting him in that position to say that he was to advise the president, even though he doesn't direct the orders of actually doing the withdrawal? I'd like to see Trump make some comments on that. I'm sure they're going to ask him in questions, but from the press.
Kevin will talk about more. Of course, he has undertaken a historic cost-cutting effort across the federal government, launching the first ever Department of Government Efficiency, uncovering corruption on a scale that we never thought imaginable, terminating every single federal worker that we have found to be engaged in the corruption and theft and the waste of taxpayer dollars.
I just saw on Reddit too that basically Elon, Doge, whatever, sent out an email to all these government employees asking them to provide 5 bullet points of what they did for the week. And apparently they were upset about that, which I thought that was common practice in any job you ever work, that you have to write some kind of what they call a WAR, weekly activity report. But apparently just writing an email to your HR saying this is what I did this week is somehow just awful. But people are going to complain about everything that they do, of course.
And already saving $50 billion in a single year, which over a 10-year period would be $500 billion. Just think about how vast and enormous that sum is. Of course, as you all know, he has renamed the Gulf of Mexico to its correct and proper name, the Gulf of America. He has renamed Mount Denali into Mount McKinley, part of a historic effort to restore patriotism and national pride all across this land. He has ended the weaponization of the federal government, restored the Department of Justice to its true mission of combating threats to this nation and keeping the American people safe. A
lot of people who were upset about names of bases being changed and Aunt Jemima being taken off the label. Suddenly they're okay with Gulf of America being changed from Gulf of Mexico. So
has ended all federal censorship of free speech. This has been one of the greatest crises that has plagued this nation. Years and years and years of the federal government violating the First Amendment to take away Americans' right of free speech. President Trump has ended that, and he has demanded that all federal workers, all law enforcement, cease any effort to intimidate the rights of Americans or to police their speech. He has also restored the death penalty at the Department of Justice, including for illegal aliens who commit murder, including for those who murder cops, and including for all of those who threaten Americans with heinous acts of violence.
Well, I saw the press was asking him about drug dealers as well, and he was saying that we should have the death penalty for drug dealers. And he was saying that because drug dealers killed 500 people, in their lifetime of dealing drugs or whatever, put whatever number you want to put on the person. He's saying that there's no reason that we shouldn't have the death penalty for them as well, and that would deter them from wanting to be drug dealers. Who knows if that's actually true or not? I think we kind of went through the whole war on drugs thing and it didn't really work, but that's something that he wants to do. I could definitely see like murderers. If you murder someone, like it's cut and dry case, yeah, whatever, death penalty. But the drug dealer issue is a little bit more controversial.
The death penalty is back. Law and order is back. The streets are being made safe once again. On the public health front, he has launched the nation's first ever commission, the MAHA Commission, Make America Healthy Again, following the historic confirmation of RFK Jr., to finally uncover the true root causes of the public health crisis in this country, the childhood disease epidemic in this country, the spiraling rates of pediatric cancer, and devastating childhood sickness. He has finally created a situation where the federal health agencies in this country will be focused on preventing disease, on keeping children from getting sick in the first place, not sending them to a lifetime in and out of hospitals, suffering needlessly, when we can find ways to prevent this epidemic of illness. Then, of course, on Homeland Security. Today, it is officially the law of the land, at the conclusion of the congressional notification process, that 6 Mexican cartels and 2 transnational gangs, Tren de Aragua, or TDA, and MS-13, so 8 organizations in total, are now formally designated as foreign terrorist organizations, which means that every single member of those organizations who operates on U.S. soil is now, as a legal matter, a terrorist, and they will be treated as terrorists. This is a sea change in U.S. policy. And this means the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, along with the rest of U.S. law enforcement and the Department of Defense, are now operating in a legal reality where these cartels are recognized as terrorists. And there will be a whole of government effort to remove these terrorists from our soil and to degrade their ability to threaten or undermine any American security or sovereignty interests. Border crossings, since the day he took office, are down 95%. I think it's almost impossible to even describe the scale and scope of that achievement. President Trump, within days of taking office, cut border crossings 95%. And those few who have dared to cross are being either prosecuted or deported. They're either facing significant jail time for trafficking, smuggling, harboring, aiding, impeding, or they're being immediately removed from our soil. Either way, at the end of the process, they are going home.
As they should.
He's re-implemented Remain in Mexico, and he has obtained historic cooperation from foreign countries all around the world in accepting their deportees back. And he has used the United States military to fully seal the southern border with a historic deployment of both active duty and National Guard troops, resumed the building of infrastructure, he has opened up Guantanamo Bay, and he's using military aircraft to carry out deportations all across this country. And ICE is joining with ATF, DEA, and FBI to carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. The criminals are going home. The border is sealed shut. America is safe, sovereign, proud, and free. We are a nation that everyone in the world understands all across this planet. You do not come here illegally. You will not get in. You will go to jail. You will go home. You will not succeed. This is the biggest and most successful change in any area of law enforcement that this nation has ever seen, and he did it in under 1 month.
I'm ready for what dumb questions these reporters are going to ask.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Stephen. One of the things that President Trump cares most about is job creation, and it was about 7 years ago I had the honor of joining you in this room for the first time, and it looks like we've created a lot more jobs in the last month. Look at how many people are here. My estimate is about 180, but I didn't count. So thank you. It's really an honor to be back here. I think that I just want to go over a few things and then hand it off to Mike. The first thing is that the president has told us to prioritize fighting inflation. And he had to do that because, as you know, President Biden let inflation get completely out of control. And he did it with policies that made no sense. They made no sense. A lot of times people say to us, our friends, the journalists, why are you doing that? But I like to think, why did they do that?
Why are you killing our economy?
Why did they spend so much money? And then why did the Fed print so much money so that we had inflation as high as we've ever seen since Jimmy Carter? So why did they do that? So we're addressing inflation. We didn't have to address it in the first term because it was always in the ones, almost always. But we're going to get it back there. And how are we doing it? Well, we're doing it with a plan that President Trump and I and others have talked about in the Oval that involves like every level of fighting inflation. First, the macroeconomic level. We're cutting spending. We're cutting spending in negotiations with people on the Hill. We're cutting spending with the advice of our IT consultant, Elon Musk. And then we're also looking into supply side things, like restoring Trump's tax cuts, maybe even expensing new factories so that there's an explosion of supply. If you have an explosion of supply and a reduction in government demand, then inflation goes way down. And then one of the things that you want to say is, well, when are you going to see it? Well, the first thing that you'll see when the markets believe that we're going to get inflation under control is that the 10-year Treasury rate goes down, because that's how they think about future expected inflation. And so we're still going to see some memory of Biden's inflation. It's not going to go away in a month. But the 10-year Treasury before the last consumer price index had dropped about 40 basis points. 40 basis points because markets were optimistic about our ability to fight inflation. 40 basis points is kind of not a fun thing to say. Economists talk that way. I apologize. But the way to think about it is, for a typical mortgage, if that affects the mortgage rate, then it's going to save a typical family buying a house about $1,000 a year. And that's just in our first month. Okay. The second thing we've done is we've had a lot of trade talks. In fact, I was just meeting a minister from Mexico with Howard Lutnick just a couple of hours ago. And we're talking about reciprocal trade, and we're also talking about the fentanyl crisis. And so reciprocal trade is about our government treating other governments the way they treat us. We want trade to be fair. It turns out that Americans have been disadvantaged by foreign governments over and over, and President Trump wants it to stop.
Go figure.
And the fact that struck me as most noticeable when I started to look at what President Trump was asking us to do is that last year we have data, U.S. companies paid $370 billion in taxes to foreign governments.
Do you guys remember last week how all the Democrats were saying that tariffs only hurt us, yet every country that we were talking about doing tariffs, higher tariffs on, we're doing retaliatory tariffs? And so now tariffs are good, I guess.
$370 billion. Last year, foreign multinationals paid us $57 billion in taxes. We have 1/4 of world GDP. They have 3/4 of world GDP, and we're paying 370, they're paying 57. This is not reciprocal. We're going to try, or we're going to.
The Democrats are now cheering on Canada to give us the highest tariffs that they possibly can when they were just saying tariffs hurt us. So are Canadians now hurting themselves by doing higher tariffs on the US? Where did that go? That was all last week that they were saying that tariffs just hurt the person imposing the tariffs.
Fix it. The other thing that we've done is we've had an all-of-the-above energy approach that's led by Doug Burgum and Chris and a really large team, EPA. And we've already made so many actions that are going to affect the price of energy and lower inflation. We've opened up 625 million acres to energy exploration. We've cut 50 years of red tape that makes it so you can't have permits. And we've even made it so that when you go home, if you get a new one, then you can take a shower or flush a toilet or read under a light bulb. We're doing that too. So finally, let's just think about like the facts that we can see right now that we think are awesome. So guess what? Small business optimism has gone up by the most ever since President Trump came in.
Yeah.
ISM, which is the measure of what's going on in manufacturing, it's expanding again for the first time in years. CEO confidence is the highest it's been in years. And the reason people are thinking this is that our policies give people cause for optimism. And then I want to reiterate what Stephen Miller said, because it's so important, and it's so important for financial markets to start to digest this, that if, say, the Treasury Secretary or any cabinet secretary with Elon Musk is able to find some savings, say $100 billion, well, in CBO land, that's actually like about 10 times that, or maybe 12 times that, over a 10-year window. And so when you're thinking about the negotiations right now over reconciliation and thinking about, well, 4 trillion, 5 trillion, well, those numbers in terms of the savings are going to end up being small because of all the waste that we're finding. And so we're incredibly optimistic about the future of inflation and the future of our economy. And we're optimistic because we're making so much progress so far, and we already see it in market prices. And with that, I'll hand it off to Mike.
All right. Thanks, Gil. Well, good afternoon.
There's a reporter in here who has a camera just like this, and they keep hitting the button, and they have not silenced the effect of when you hit record and not hit record. It sounds just like this camera. I know because I use that camera. Super annoying. I wish they would just shut it off.
What a month, and what a sea change in our foreign policy. In addition to what we're doing on the border and restoring American sovereignty, in addition to what we're doing in our economy and the job creation and the inflation reduction, we are bringing the world back to where it was at the end of President Trump's first term, which is a world of peace, prosperity, and looking forward and getting us out of the chaos that we've just seen over the last 4 years. So over the last month, just to name a few, I had the honor of sitting in the Oval Office as President Trump spoke with President Putin and then immediately spoke with President Zelensky. And both of them said only President Trump could bring both sides to the table, and only President Trump could stop the horrific fighting that has been going on now for the better part of 4 years.
Because nobody wanted to talk to Biden.
And that only President Trump could drive the world back to peace. Both of those leaders said that in back-to-back.
I don't know if it's only President Trump could do this, but definitely nobody wanted to talk to Biden.
Calls. And of course, we just had our historic talks mediated by our good friends and partners, Saudi Arabia. We give great thanks to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for hosting, and sat down for the first time in years with the Russians and talked about a path forward with peace. On top of that, and one of the things that led to that was the tremendous confidence building measure that we had with the release of Mark Fogel. I'll remind everyone, the last time that we had an American released from the Russians, either we gave up a deadly spy, pressured our allies to give up a lethal killer, or we
would give them like 3 times more what we were getting back. It was very upsetting. And they would talk about it in the White House press briefings like it was some kind of victory. It was very annoying.
Released under the Biden administration, the world's most notorious arms dealer, Victor Bout, who, by the way, had one of his main clients for arms, the cartels in Mexico and Central America.
And all of the press would run with, oh, Biden got these people back. But they would not talk about in the article what we traded them for. They would just try to portray it like it was a victory.
We gave up none of that. This was released as a confidence-building measure, working with our great Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, and our Secretary of State as a first step towards opening these talks and then moving forward towards peace. On top of that, we've secured, just in a month, the return of 12 American hostages from Russia, from Bulgaria, from Venezuela, the Taliban, and Hamas. Excuse me, that's from Belarus, not Bulgaria. We also had, for the first time in quite some time, we took out a senior leader of ISIS, an international financier and recruiter that the military had been trying to take out for quite some time. And wasn't able to do so, frankly, because of a bureaucratic approval process. President Trump said, take him out, and that ISIS financier and leader is no longer on this earth. We've also taken action to eliminate other terrorist organizations in the Middle East. We drove, before the president was even in office, he started talking consequences for people that would hold Americans. Heretofore, there's been nothing but upside. You take an American, you get some better deal. You take another one, maybe you get a better deal. No more. There is now nothing but downside for taking Americans illegally, either as hostages or illegal detainees. And when President Trump sent a very clear message across the Middle East, but particularly to Hamas, that there would be all hell to pay, we suddenly saw a breakthrough.
Go figure. Go figure that's how that works.
And now we just saw the release of yet another group of hostages. There have been dozens now, including 2 Americans that we've seen once again reunited with their families. As part of the talks with King Abdullah, he offered, and I think the entire world is graciously accepted, to take 2,000 sick children, cancer patients, and others out of Gaza as a humanitarian gesture. 2,000 Gazans will come out of that hellhole that it is, that wasteland that Gaza is right now, with unexploded ordnance, with debris everywhere, with no sewage, with no water. And President Trump has put forward a plan to deal with the practical reality that is 1.8 million Gazans now truly suffering. And then, just to bring it back to our own hemisphere, we've seen literally in the last month, after years of national security experts, the generals in charge, and others testifying and ringing the alarm bells about the Chinese Communist Party's presence in our own hemisphere, particularly in the Panama Canal. We're seeing the leadership of Panama step away from the Belt and Road program, move away from China and back towards the United States, and even enter into talks and other negotiations about addressing the ports on either side of the canal. And then finally, last but not least, we've had 4 world leaders in the White House, in the Oval Office. We've had the Prime Minister of Japan, the Prime Minister of India, the King of Jordan, and of course the Prime Minister of Israel. Just in the last 4 weeks, and next week we'll have the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and we'll have the President of France, Macron. So President Trump is on what we call Trump warp speed. We are all...
So we've had all of these victories. And now, as soon as this guy's done talking, the press is going to come out here. Obviously, they're going to be left-leaning for the most part, besides maybe Ducey. And I just want to hear what they're going to ask. What are they going to comment? It's just, they came out here, they spent 22 minutes talking about all the wins that they've had so far. How are they going to bring them down?
We are all honored to be really serving under his leadership and his vision. And truly, you know, when we all say, and the president himself says, he is a president of peace. He is a president focused on restoring stability. I think the entire world saw what the world will look like without strong American leadership in the last 4 years. And it's truly been an honor to get us back to where we were and back on track under President Trump's leadership.
Thank you, Mike.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Ask some questions.
Thank you, everybody. I'm sure you're very eager to ask questions of these very smart people working very hard on behalf of the president. We do have somebody in our new media seat today. We have John Stoll, who is the head of news at X. As you all know, you're all on X. It's home to hundreds of millions of users, a large contingent of independent journalists and news organizations across geographies and political spectrums. And at the same time, X remains the go-to platform for many legacy news outlets. And I know, as I mentioned, many of the reporters in this room use X to attract eyeballs to your work. Prior to joining X, John spent 2 decades in journalism, including several years as an editor at the Wall Street Journal. We are excited to have him in the briefing room today. John, we'll let you kick it off. And as I said at the top, please direct your question to the individual up here who you'd like an answer from. John, why don't you begin?
All right, thank you very much. I am sitting in for a thriving ecosystem of journalists, independent and emerging news organizations who do depend on X for publicity, for a business model. And so I look forward to seeing many of them in this seat in months and years to come. I also thank you, Caroline, for opening this seat up to new media. It really is a testament not only to your open-mindedness, but also to innovation, that you'd actually think about, you know, folks that are not traditionally credentialed to be in this room, and not only have a question, but also to witness. You know, this is at a very important intersection of power and the free press. And so just the ability to witness this and be part of it, it brings everybody's game up. So thank you for that. I think this is for Mike Waltz. My question is about Ukraine.
Sure.
For about more than 10 years, I've been fascinated, like many, with what's going on. Was in Northern Europe, working out of the Baltics when Crimea was annexed, and was a lot of this came on Twitter. The platform used to be known as Twitter. Was a lot of European leaders would talk about their disappointment and solidarity with Ukraine, but when it came to actually doing something, it felt like they were passing a hot potato and sent it over the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of
The U.S. is going to come in and help, right? They're going to come in and spend billions of dollars. We don't have to do anything.
what we're seeing right now out of the administration and President Trump is a call to Europe and the European leaders and the allies that we've traditionally had to pick up that hot potato and start doing something a little bit more concrete to win and preserve the peace in Ukraine. The second question I have is, it's related, is there's been a lot of speculation that President Trump and the administration might be manipulated by Vladimir Putin. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the administration's posture and your confidence in the competence of this administration to go toe-to-toe with Vladimir Putin.
Well, if there's I'll take the second question first. If there's anybody in this world that can go toe-to-toe with Putin, that could go toe-to-toe with Xi, that could go toe-to-toe with Kim Jong-un, and we could keep going down the list, it's Donald J. Trump. He is the deal maker in chief. There is no question that he is the commander in chief. And I, for one, and I think all Americans and around the world should have no doubt about his ability to not only handle Putin, but to handle the complexity of driving this war to an end. And then on your first piece on Europe, I'll take you back to 2014. You're right, there was a lot of hand-wringing in Europe and not a lot of action. There's also a lot of hand-wringing here in Washington under the Obama administration and not a lot of action. They literally threw blankets at the problem. And so I'll remind everyone that Putin had some type of conflict, invasion, or issue with their neighbor under President Bush with Georgia, under President Obama with Ukraine 2014, not under President Trump 45, and again with President Biden in 2022. The war should have been deterred. The war should have never happened, and I have no doubt it would not have happened under President Trump and will stop under President Trump again. But I just want to push back on this notion of our European allies not being consulted as we've entered into this process. I already mentioned the immediate phone call President Trump made to President Zelensky. He has talked to President Macron of France repeatedly last week. President Macron convened European leaders and then is coming here on Monday. Prime Minister Starmer is coming next Thursday. I've talked to every one of my national security advisor counterparts across the spectrum in Europe. I've talked to Secretary General Rutte, the leader of NATO, the Secretary General of NATO. We have repeatedly, oh, by the way, we had half our cabinet, 7 cabinet officials, including the vice president, at the Munich Security Conference, all engaging, all listening, and all making sure our allies are heard. However, we've also made it clear for years, decades even, that it is unacceptable that the United States and the United States taxpayer continues to bear the burden, not only of the cost of the war in Ukraine, but of the defense of Europe. We fully support our NATO allies. We fully support the Article 5 commitment, but it's time for our European allies to step up. And one of the things that Secretary General Rutte said on our call was, this last couple of weeks have been a real wake-up call. And I asked him, what have you been missing the last couple of years? The fact that we are going to enter into a NATO summit this June with a third of our NATO allies still not meeting the 2% minimum, a commitment they made a decade ago, literally a decade ago, with a war on their doorstep, the largest war that they're all extremely concerned about, but yet it's, well, somebody else needs to pay. We've got other domestic priorities. It's unacceptable. President Trump's made that clear. And the minimum needs to be met. We need to be at 100% in this June at the NATO summit. And then let's talk about exceeding it, which is what President Trump has been talking about with 5% of GDP. Europe needs to step up for their own defense as a partner, and we can be friends and allies and have those tough conversations.
Sure.
Great. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. I have a Ukraine one and a Doge one. Who can talk Doge?
Steven.
I could
do Doge,
all of us.
Well, so
Talk
Stephen,
Doge.
we're hearing about these Doge dividend checks that would be 20% back to taxpayers, 20% to pay down the debt, 60% is left. Who gets that?
Well, the way that it works is when you achieve savings, you can either return it to taxpayers, you can return it to our debtors, or it can be cycled into next year's budget, and then it just lowers the overall baseline for next year. So in other words, you can just transfer into the next fiscal window and then lower the overall spending level. And that means that you can achieve a permanent savings that way, and that reduces the deficit.
And when is it that people might see those checks?
Well, this is all going to be worked on through the reconciliation process with Congress that's going underway right now. As you've seen, the Senate's moving a bill, the House is moving a bill. The President has great confidence in both chambers to deliver on his priorities. I would just take this opportunity to note that President Trump has made a historic commitment to the working class of this country to fight for major tax relief and major price relief. And cutting spending, as Doge is doing, and cutting taxes is the key to delivering on both of those promises, and President Trump is resolutely committed to doing both.
Thank you. And on Ukraine, I guess this is for Mike.
Sure.
After the president's post on Truth Social yesterday, need to know, who does he think is more responsible for the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Putin or Zelensky?
That's a really good question.
Well, look, his goal, Peter, is to bring this war to an end, period.
That's a political answer.
And there has been ongoing fighting on both sides. It is World War I style trench warfare. His frustration with President Zelensky is that you've heard is multifold. One, there needs to be a deep appreciation for what the American people, what the American taxpayer, what President Trump did in his first term, and what we've done since. So some of the rhetoric coming out of Kyiv, frankly, and insults to President Trump were unacceptable, number one. Number two, our own Secretary of Treasury personally made the trip to offer the Ukrainians what can only be described as a historic opportunity. That is for America to co-invest with Ukraine in their minerals, in their resources, to truly grow the pie. So case in point, there's a foundry that processes aluminum in Ukraine. It's been damaged. It's not at its current capacity. If that is restored, it would account for America's entire imports of aluminum for an entire year. That one foundry. There are tremendous resources there. Not only is that long-term security for Ukraine, not only do we help them grow the pie with investments, but we do have an obligation to the American taxpayer in helping them recoup the hundreds of billions that have occurred. So, rather than enter into some constructive conversations about what that deal should be going forward, we got a lot of rhetoric in the media that was incredibly unfortunate. And I could just tell you, Peter, as a veteran, as somebody who's been in combat, this war is horrific. And I think we've lost sight of that, of the literally thousands of people that are dying a day, families that are going without the next generation. And I find it kind of, frankly ridiculous. So many people in Washington that were just pounding the table for a ceasefire in Gaza are suddenly aghast that the president would demand one and both sides come to the table when it comes to Ukraine, a war that has been arguably far greater in scope and scale, and far more dangerous in terms of global escalation to U.S. security.
And I do have one for Caroline. Does President Trump have a bet with Trudeau about this USA-Canada hockey game tonight? And when there is a big hockey game on, is the president watching for the goals or for the fights?
Probably both. I think he's watching for the United States to win tonight. I know he talked to the USA hockey team this morning. He talked to the players after their morning practice around 10 o'clock. And I also spoke to some folks from that team after. They were jubilant over President Trump's comments to the team. I believe they're going to put out a video of that call. So he looks forward to watching the game tonight, and we look forward to the United States beating our soon-to-be 51st state, Canada. Bloomberg, go ahead.
Jeez.
Question for Mike Waltz. Can you give us a readout of Kellogg's meeting with Zelensky that just wrapped up? And in particular, Zelensky publicly rejected this deal about the rare earth minerals. Where does that stand?
Well, we're going to continue to have, he needs to come back to the table, and we're going to continue to have discussions about where that deal is going. Again, we have an obligation to the taxpayer. I think this is an opportunity. The president thinks this is an opportunity for Ukraine going forward. There can be, in my view, nothing better for Ukraine's future and for their security than to have the United States invested in their prosperity long term. And then a key piece of this has also been security guarantees. Look, the reality that we're talking about here is it in Ukraine's interest? Is it in Europe's interest? It certainly isn't in Russia's interest or in the American people's interest for this war to grind on forever and ever and ever. So a key part of his conversation was helping President Zelensky understand this war needs to come to an end. This kind of open-ended mantra that we've had under the Biden administration, that's over. And I think a lot of people are having a hard time accepting that. And then the other piece is there's been discussions from Prime Minister Starmer and also President Macron about European-led security guarantees. We welcome that. We've been asking Europe to step up and secure its own prosperity, safety, and security. So we certainly welcome that, and we certainly welcome more European assistance. As I told my counterparts, come to the table with more if you want a bigger seat at the table. And we've been asking for that for quite some time.
And has Russia pushed for sanctions in your talks with them? And have you consulted with international partners and allies about potentially rolling back sanctions in these negotiations to end the war?
The talks with our Russian counterparts, both with my counterpart, the National Security Advisor, Secretary Rubio's counterpart, the Foreign Minister Lavrov, it really was quite broad, focused on what is the goals for our broader relationship. But very clear that the fighting has to stop to get to any of those brighter goals. And as a first step, we're just going to do some common sense things like restore the ability of both of our embassies to function. And again, this is common sense in foreign policy world. They call it shuttle diplomacy. We have to talk to both sides in order to get to both sides to the table. And both sides have said only President Trump could do that.
Deanna.
Thank you. And my question is for Mike Waltz.
All right.
Sorry.
The president has called Zelensky a dictator. Does he view Putin as a dictator? And does he want Zelensky out of power? I know he's called for elections. And then thirdly, the head of the Defense Committee in Ukraine's parliament just has claimed that the U.S. has stopped selling weapons to Ukraine. Is that true?
Well, most of our weapons that have gone to Ukraine have been part of a drawdown authority where we've literally taken them out of our stocks and then eventually through appropriations started buying them again to refill our stocks. I'll just state that there has been a lag in a lot of that process. So many of our stocks, as we look at our operations around the world, are becoming more depleted. That's one of the reasons many people have had a lot of concern about when does this end? How much is it going to take? How many lives will be lost? How much will we spend? As a member of Congress, we repeatedly asked the Biden administration those questions, and we never got a satisfactory answer. Look, President Trump is obviously very frustrated right now with President Zelensky. The fact that that he hasn't come to the table, that he hasn't been willing to take this opportunity that we have offered. I think he eventually will get to that point, and I hope so very quickly. But President Trump, as we made clear to our Russian counterparts, and I want to make clear today, he's focused on stopping the fighting and moving forward. And we could argue all day long about what's happened in the past.
Reagan.
Yeah, what about I have a question for Stephen.
Excuse me, I just called on Reagan. Reagan, go ahead.
I have a question for Stephen and a question for Mike.
Sure.
Stephen, I can start with you. There have been reports that Trump is unhappy with the rate of deportations and he wants them to be higher. Is the president happy with the rate of deportations? And
Oh no, he made a tweet about that. He said he wanted them to step up the deportations.
are there any plans to speed up the process?
Well, first of all, we all appreciate the encouragement from the media to deport as many illegal aliens as humanly possible. So thank you, and I will promise you that the full might of the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, and every element and instrument of national power will be used to remove, with speed, all criminal illegals from the soil of the United States of America, to enforce final removal orders, and to ensure that this country is for American citizens and those who legally belong in this country. We inherited an ICE that was completely shuttered. We inherited a Department of Homeland Security whose sole mission was to resettle illegal aliens within the United States of America. In 30 days, the president sealed the border shut, declared the cartels to be terrorist organizations, has increased ICE deportations to levels not seen in decades, and we are shortly on the verge of achieving a pace and speed of deportations this country has never before seen. Thank you.
And Mike, there have been reports that there's some underground opposition to Trump's pick for Undersecretary of Defense and Policy, Elbridge Colby. Have you or anyone from the administration been personally lobbying senators to support Elbridge Colby?
Look, I've worked with Colby in the past. He has the president's full support to be the Undersecretary of Policy, which will be a critical policy arm for Secretary Hegseth going forward that will implement a lot of these policies. And really, that's been to the extent of it. I think there's been a lot of kind of, breathless, I don't know, back and forth in the press, but we're full speed ahead to get the president's team in place so we can implement his America First policy.
Thank you.
Full speed.
Mike has spoken pretty extensively. Does anybody have questions for Stephen or for Mr. Hassett? Nobody wants to talk about the economy? Sure.
Yeah.
IRS? Okay, go ahead.
This would be for either one of you. So we reported, several other outlets have reported that about 3,500 people are due to be lose their jobs at the IRS by the end of the week. If the goal of these spending cuts across the federal government has been to reduce the debt, why impose some of the deepest cuts we've seen so far at the agency responsible for raising revenue for the federal government?
Well, I think our objective is to make sure that the employees that we pay are being productive and effective. And there are many.
Boom! Because you suck. That's what he said.
More than 100,000 people working to collect taxes, and not all of them are fully occupied. And the Treasury Secretary is studying the matter and feels like 3,500 is a small number, and probably can get bigger, especially as we improve the IT at the IRS. And so I think that it's absolutely something that is on the table for good reasons. And the point is that don't just talk about the IRS, talk about all of government. That there are so many places. I live in D.C. You maybe live in D.C. where nobody's going to the buildings. People aren't commuting because nobody's doing their job. We look back and we see that there are all these people doing 2 jobs while they're getting a government payroll on the payroll. So the point is we're fixing that, and the IRS is a small.
Go to Reddit and check out Overworked, or I think that's the subreddit. It's Overworked, where these people are getting like 5 remote jobs and they're not doing any of the job's productivity.
All part of that picture.
So you're saying that everybody who's being let go was doing a bad job?
I'm saying that we're studying every agency and deciding who to let go and why. And we're doing so very rationally with a lot of support from analysis.
Because we're being told by a lot of people who have been let go at other agencies that they were told they were being dismissed because of poor performance, when in some cases they haven't even had a performance review yet because they've only been on the job a couple of months.
Yeah.
In that situation, they're probably not needed. And what we're doing right now is we're cutting cost. I think that's just common sense. I don't really know why you're asking this question.
Never seen a person who was laid off for poor performance say that they were performing poorly. Okay.
Carolyn?
Sure, Caitlin.
I have a question. I'll start with you, Kevin Hassett. Thank you for being here. And then I've got a question for Mr. Waltz. On these potential checks that you might send out from DOJ, is there a concern as you're thinking through this that they could be inflationary?
Oh, absolutely not, because imagine if we don't spend government money and we give it back to people, then if they spend it all, then you're even. But they're probably going to save a lot of it, in which case you're reducing inflation. Okay, so and also, when the government spends a lot, that's what creates inflation. We learned that from Joe Biden. And so if we reduce government spending, then that's reduces inflation. And if you give people money, then they're going to save a bunch of it. And when they save it, then that also reduces demand and reduces inflation.
Okay.
I like this guy. He's pretty good.
So you're not worried about it. And
No, I'm
Mr.
not.
Waltz, to follow up on Peter's question, you wrote in an op-ed in the fall of 2023 that, quote, Putin is to blame, certainly like Al-Qaeda was to blame for 9/11. Do you still feel that way now, or do you share the president's assessment as he says Ukraine is to blame for the start of this war?
Well, it shouldn't surprise you that I share the president's assessment on all kinds of issues. What I wrote as a member of Congress was as a former member of Congress. Look, what I share the president's assessment on is that the war has to end. And what comes with that? What comes with that should be, at some point, elections. What comes with that should be peace. What comes with that is prosperity that we've just offered in this natural resources and economic partnership arrangement. An end to the killing and European security and security for the world. The president's not only determined to do that in Europe, he's determined to do it in the Middle East. And just a few months ago, we had an administration that had tried for 15 months. Week after week, sitting with you here and couldn't get us to a ceasefire, couldn't get our hostages out. Now we're at that point. We're back to maximum pressure on Iran, and we will we have just begun, and we will drive towards a ceasefire and all of those other steps. I'm not going to pre-negotiate or get ahead of the sequencing of all of that. It's a very delicate situation. But this is a president of peace, and who here would argue against peace?
Okay, so you do share that assessment. And can I follow up? In
That's
2017,
not what he
Jordan
said.
and Trump.
Go
Can I
ahead,
just
Jordan.
follow up really
You
quick?
just had 2 questions, Caitlin.
Meg,
Jordan,
can I
go ahead.
Mr.
I have an
Hassett.
important follow-up.
Jordan,
from
go
my
ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
Mr. Hassett, you were speaking about tariff revenue, and you also addressed a question about the IRS. President Trump has spoken about replacing income tax with tariff revenue, especially with all this waste, fraud, and abuse that we're seeing cut. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you think about the China tariff revenue that we're estimating is coming in from the 10% that we just added, plus the de minimis thing, that it's between $500 billion and $1 trillion over 10 years is our estimate. And that's something that is outside of the reductions that markets are seeing through the negotiations up on the Hill. And so we expect that the tariff revenue is actually going to make it much easier for Republicans to pass a bill, and that was the president's plan all along.
And then I have a question for Stephen Miller about Doge. So you spoke about Doge. You said roughly $50 billion is set to be cut in a year of waste, fraud, and abuse by unelected bureaucrats. We're hearing this ironic narrative from the president's critics and the left-wing media that Elon Musk is an unelected bureaucrat and he's doing all this terrible stuff. Isn't one of Doge's objectives to get rid of the federal bureaucracy, the deep state, and also who was running the White House when Joe Biden was in office? Because I don't know a single person who believes it was Joe Biden.
Yes. You're tempting me to say some very harsh things about some of our media friends. Yes, it is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm looking at the clock. We've almost had an hour of time. I know a couple of these individuals have a meeting to get to at 2 p.m. So you're welcome to follow up with my team for further questions. We're going to let these guys get back to running the United States government.
That was a really good White House press briefing.
And we will see you all later. President Trump will be speaking at 3 o'clock at the Black.
Probably the best one I've ever watched. That was a good one. That was the best White House press briefing I've watched in a really long time. Move on to something else. Let's do this and this. All right, so this is going to be Trump hosting a reception for Black History Month. I know a lot of people were saying that Trump was going to erase Black History Month entirely, so we're going to go ahead and see what happens.
The President of the United States, and with the President is world champion golfer, Mr. Tiger Woods.
And Tiger Woods here, apparently. It's got the presidential medal right there. It's almost like Black History Month wasn't erased by Trump. That's kind of weird, right? But maybe if we like crop some more pictures of him doing a certain salute, we could convince people that he's gonna erase Black History Month.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. This is some crowd. How are you? Thank you. Leo.
Weird.
This is some crowd. These are the best people, Tiger. And we have Adam Scott here also, winner of the Masters, one of the greatest golfers in the world. I've always tried to swing just like Adam. It never worked out that way. And Tiger, we know, and I just want to thank Adam and Tiger and the Commissioner of Golf. Is Jay, thank you very much for being here. Jay Monahan, head of the PGA, and we had some interesting discussions. But let me ask you, is there anybody like our Tiger? How are you? He's the great. Would you want to just say a couple of words, Tiger? He doesn't. He's much more comfortable. Tiger.
Hey, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be here with you, Mr. President, and to be honored here with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Love you too. Go right over here. Thanks, Tiger.
Did you say I love you too?
All of you very much for being here. Welcome to the White House, and we proudly celebrate Black History Month. How are you, darling?
Impossible.
Today we pay tribute to the generations of Black legends, champions, warriors, and patriots who helped drive our country forward to greatness. And you really are great people. What a great, nice group of...
It's almost like he didn't want to erase Black History Month.
I have some people in front of me every once in a while with all the problems that are caused all over the world. They're not nice. They're not nice. And but we're making them nice. I can tell you that, and we're making them nice rapidly. So we're pleased to be joined in this really beautiful afternoon at the White House by hundreds of incredible members of the African American community, many of whom are making history themselves, including one of the greatest athletes of all time, who you just said hello, the man who matched Sam Snead's #1 record for the most PGA Tour wins ever, and a man who has 15 majors, and he's got a long way to go, too. I was with him a week ago. We played. I think he's got some left.
Didn't he also, like, beat his wife or get a DUI or something? Something happened with him. I forgot. Let me look it up.
He's got a couple of majors left, maybe more than that. But Tiger Woods, he's an incredible guy, an incredible athlete, incredible player. Thank you for being with us, Tiger. Thank you very much. And he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which he proudly wore today. And we have Senator Tim Scott here. What do you think, Tim? You never got the Presidential Medal. Maybe someday. Maybe someday. You better believe it. And also, Adam, thank you very much. Adam is, as Tiger will tell you, one of the greatest players and one of the great modern players. And he had 32 wins worldwide and winning the Masters also. And he's something very special and a great representative of golfers and athletes. Thank you very much, Adam. Even though he doesn't quite come from our country, he sort of does, right? He's here a lot. He comes from another nice place like Australia, right? And they've
So apparently his wife beat him so bad with a 9-iron that he had to have plastic surgery. That's what I was thinking of. Jesus. I think he cheated on her though or something and she found out and then I guess she just beat the shit out of him.
been very good, very, very good to us. Jay, thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. We also have the head of Pfizer here, so I want to thank him. One of the great people, one of the great businessmen.
Oof, head of Pfizer getting booed.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you.
Yikes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Come on, guys. During the Black History Month celebration, you're going to be this controversial?
I want to congratulate our newly sworn-in Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Scott Turner. Come here. I got to say hello. Come on up here, Scott. I had Tim Scott pushing him so hard, you have no idea. I had no choice. Is that right, Tim? No, Scott is, I've known him a long time, and Scott's a real champion. Say a couple of words, Scott, please.
Well, hello, everyone. Is everybody happy to be here together? Is everybody happy to be here together? Amen. Well, first of all, I want to thank President Trump for his confidence and appointing me to this position. I consider it a great honor and a great blessing. And I thank God for this, and I'm real humbled by it. And you can guarantee that every day that I'm going to lay it down for the people of America. As Senator Tim Scott, thank you for your leadership. I really appreciate you. And for all of those who have gone before us, and those of you who have such a great voice today, keep on speaking, keep on preaching for not just Black America, but for all America. So we appreciate you. And my sister Brooke Rollins and all of those here, Mr. President, we look forward to working with you, sir, and carrying out this great agenda. We pray for you every day. God bless you, and thank you. God bless America. Thank you for President Trump.
Thank you. Congratulations. And I see we have a newly, I think you just got in, right? They just confirmed you, and you did it very nicely. Brooke Rollins, she's the Secretary of Agriculture. It's a big deal. That's great, Brooke. That was a good vote you had, too, huh? She went through very easily, a little easier than some of our people, but they were all approved, every one of them. And today we just had Kash Patel approved, which is great. So, Brooke, congratulations. Secretary of Agriculture, that's big stuff, right? That's big. So you're going to do fantastically. And congratulations also to a really good friend of mine. He endorsed me early, and he was one of the best surrogates you could have. The surrogate is when you walk around and go on television shows and they go try and beat you up, but he beat them up. They didn't have a chance against Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. And he's now the longest serving Black United States Senator in the history of our country. I don't know. That's pretty good. He's going to be around for a long time, right? He just got married. Congratulations on that, too. It's beautiful, beautiful wife. Thanks as well to Congressman John James. Where's John James? Is he around? Hi, John. How are you? It's a star, young star. I knew that 5 years ago, right, John? I sort of predicted it. And I'm really proud to say that we now have more Black Republicans serving in the U.S. House than at any time since 1870. That's a long time, 1870. So thank you very much. And Scott, you're going to be fantastic. I'll tell you, you're going to do a great job. As you know, the Americans are going to be celebrating something very important coming up, our 250th anniversary, our nation's founding. And when we do, we're going to look forward to honoring the contributions of countless Black Americans who fought to win and protect and expand American freedom from the very, very beginning. And some of my good friends are here today, and I appreciate you being. I'm not going to call out your names because Tiger will get very bored. He'll say, this is a little boring. This is a little boring if we do that. But I want to thank you all for being here. You are our friends, and we appreciate this. And you, McGee, you are my friend. The last administration tried to reduce all of American history to a single year, 1619, but under our administration, we honor the indispensable role Black Americans have always played in the immortal cause of another date, 1776. We like 1776. In the very first skirmish of the Revolutionary War at Lexington Green, an enslaved black man named Prince Estabrook, you know Prince Estabrook? Yeah. Answered history's call and fought as the Minutemen alongside the other patriots of the very small Massachusetts town. Couldn't protect itself, but they did a good job. Prince was wounded in the early morning battle, becoming not only the first African-American soldier to fight in the Revolution, but the first Americans to spill their blood. One of the first in the nation to spill blood in that very, very tough time. Soon Estabrook joined the Continental Army and ultimately won his own freedom along with that of his fellow Americans. His legacy will endure, and we're very proud to honor him today. It's a very important day in our country, and we honor him. First person to spill blood happened to be Tim Estabrook. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we will be including the statue of Prince Estabrook in our new National Garden of American Heroes. We have we're going to be doing a Garden of American Heroes. And now that I think of it, I must tell you, sadly, most of them, I guess all of them are not with us any longer. I was going to put Tiger in the garden, but maybe you don't want to be there. I maybe should wait a little bit, huh? Like about 50, I think I'm going to wait about 50 years, all right? But Tiger's going to make it, okay? But I'm a little afraid to tell him yes, because he'd be the only one that's living. I don't know, Tiger. Tiger's rejecting that offer, right? Under the executive order I signed last month, this new beautiful outdoor statue park. It's going to be a statue park. It's going to be unbelievable. We're picking the final sites now. It's between various states that want it very badly. We'll honor hundreds of our greatest Americans to ever live, including countless Black Americans, icons. The garden will predominantly feature incredible women like Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, and Coretta Scott King. And I will showcase extraordinary. It will be something very extraordinary. It's going to be producing, we're going to produce some of the most beautiful works of art in the form of a statue from men like Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Jackie Robinson, what a great athlete that was, Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, he's not a bad athlete. What do you think, Muhammad? Not too bad. And the late Kobe Bryant. People love Kobe Bryant.
Wow, they're putting Kobe Bryant in there.
Save Tiger Woods for another time. That's all that I can.
Wow.
During Black History Month, we pay tribute to these heroes and to so many others, but not simply because they're Black heroes, but also because they are truly American heroes who inspire all of us, very much so. The theme of this year's celebration is African Americans and labor, and we want to thank all of the Black workers, construction workers, and every other worker. They do a job like nobody can do, and we want to just thank them very much for their contribution. Tim, the contribution you've made, Tim, is incredible. Opportunity Zone, so many people, so many. He's the father of Opportunity Zone. I'm just the son. He's the father, because he came into the White House, the Oval Office, with this idea, and it's probably the #1 economic development project ever in our country. And I want to give Senator Tim Scott the credit for it. Good job, Tim. Of course, millions of blacks were first brought here in slavery, and they were kept in that evil condition for really generations. But because of the steadfast faith and courage of so many patriots of all colors, we abolished that horrific institution, expanded civil rights, and advanced America's destiny as one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. Just a few months ago, the people in this room and millions of other black Americans played their own part in the American story when you went to the voting booths and restored a nice, good, solid government. And there's a guy that really helped. There's a man that really helped. You really are great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't forget. I'm proud to say that we received, listen to this, more votes from black Americans than any Republican president ever. Not even close. Almost 40% of the vote. Now, I won't be happy the next time. Should I run again? You tell me.
Oh, jeez. The media is going to go crazy with that one.
There's your controversy right there. There's your controversy.
4 more years. Trump said he was going to run again.
You'll be seeing that on you're gonna see that tonight, Tim, on television.
Yeah, probably.
I want to thank just a few of the people who are with us today, and these are great friends of ours. Alveda King. Alveda, where are you, Alveda? Hi, Alveda. Thank you. You've been with me from day one, and I appreciate it. I won't forget it. She's a fantastic woman. Alice Johnson. Where's Alice? Boy, are you incredible. I watched you on last night on television. You were so good. You know, Alice was in prison for doing something that today probably wouldn't even be prosecuted. She spent 22 years in prison, 22 years. She had another 22 years left. Can you believe it? And I pardoned her, and it was one of the best pardons. One of the best pardons. You know what she was on? She happened to be on the wrong telephone line. Is that true? She was on a telephone call. And I'm not saying it was perfect, but it wasn't worth 40 or 50 years, Alice. And you've been an inspiration to people. And we're going to be listening to your recommendation on pardons. You're going to go over, and she's going to be my pardon czar, okay?
Pardon
and you're
czar.
going to find people just like you that should not have happened. It should not have happened. So you're going to look and you're going to make recommendations, and I'll follow those recommendations, okay, for pardons, all right? Thank you very much. A man who's just incredible. This guy, I watched him when he was a Democrat, and then one day he had to change because he couldn't take it any longer. And did anyone ever hear of a man named Leo 2.0 Terrell? Where are you? Get up here. I love this guy. You know what he's doing now? He's with the Department of Justice. He's in charge of civil rights and lots of other great things. He's going to be working with Pam. It's okay. Could he come up, please? Come on, Leo. Get up here. Leo 2.0. This guy is great. Hello, man. Thank you. Congratulations, huh?
You are the greatest.
Thank you.
Tiger,
Thank you.
I just want to say we are in the presence of the greatest president of all time. He is the greatest president in our lifetime. And I'll tell you right now, the Democratic Party should be worried because they took us for granted. No longer. We vote in our best interest. We want the same thing that every American wants. Good job. We want a secure border. We want to pay lower taxes, and Mr. President Donald Trump is doing that. Thank you, Mr. President.
He's a great guy. No, I watched him. He was a radical Democrat. He became a radical Republican, right? He's great. He's in the Department of Justice. Think of it, doing very important work at the highest level. Also, Sage Steele. Sage, where are you? Hello, Sage.
Sage
Great
Steele.
job you're doing. You're doing great. Thank you very much, Sage, for being here. Michael, Harry O. Harris. Michael. Hi, Michael. Thank you very much, Michael. Deontay Johnson. Deontay. Thank you, Deontay. Lynn Patton. She's worked for me for a long time. Lynn. She's worked for us for a long time. Bob Woodson. Where's Bob? And we're also joined by 7-time Mr. Olympia. I want to see this guy. Phil Heath. Where's Phil?
Oh,
Phil Heath. I don't want to compare my muscles Here he is. Thank you, Phil, very much. I appreciate it. Will you come up here for a second? Come on, get up. I got to say, come on, you. From day one, right? From day one, he's been here. Get up. You got to say just a word.
Who
Don't
is this?
fall. If you fall, it's all over. Tiger, you're not allowed to fall. You know, you can make a great speech, but if you fall going up, that's no good. Come on.
Wow.
Are
you
I missed the
kidding me?
handshake. You see that? He missed the handshake.
Mr. President, it has been an honor of a lifetime to support you.
This is that YouTube guy.
To try to wake up as many people to the lies of the Democrat Party and the nonstop manipulation of the mainstream media. That's why I now have my show on Newsmax, so I can champion you, and I'm thankful.
Oh, they gave him a show, actually.
We've been able to champion him and get him across the finish lines for another amazing 4 years. And let me say, I know God has chose you. He anointed you for this position. He kept you alive so you could be here today. And we prayed for that. We prayed for you. We continue to pray for you. And we're thankful for your service and your sacrifice. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, honor. God bless you. Thank you.
From day one. I like those guys from day one. Tiger's been there from day one, too. Let me tell you, this guy is amazing. In 4 weeks, our new administration has achieved more than most administrations achieve in 4 years. We brought our country back. It's 4 weeks. Today is our 4th week. It's the end of the week. We are now starting our 5th, and I think we've done more in 4 weeks. Well, certainly than the last administration did in 4 years. They actually went negative. They actually went in the wrong direction. Together, we're going to be fighting long and hard for Black Americans and all Americans. We're going to be fighting for all Americans. We've secured our border, and we're stopping the invasion of our country. You know, our border right now is more secure than it's ever been. And we had the record. 4 years ago, we had the record. We had the lowest number in history, and now the numbers, Tim, are even lower than they were then. And we're honored. We're allowing people to come in from all over the world, from prisons and jails, mental institutions, insane asylums, gang members. They had drug dealers. They had everybody dropping in. And we had this ridiculous open border policy. They drop in. And I'll tell you, the people that were affected the most were Black people. You were affected the most in terms of the crime, in terms of the drugs and everything else. And we have the border shut down. We allow people to come in. We want people to come in, Tim, but we want them to come in legally. They're going to come through legally. So we're protecting American workers, including millions of Black workers, and we have a thing called reciprocal tariffs. If they charge us, we charge them. This is opening up. We just signed the bill, and we're going to take in billions and billions of dollars, and we're making our country very healthy again and very rich again. We want to be very rich again. We've been taken advantage by everybody, and you've been watching Doge, where we found billions, tens of billions of dollars of fraud and waste and abuse, and that's just the beginning. And Elon Musk has done an amazing job, I have to tell you. Him and his super geniuses, you know, these are seriously high IQ people. And nobody's going to talk them out of anything. They go in and they're finding billions. I mean, literally tens of billions of dollars that we just started. And I think that's going to have a big, big impact, Brooke, right? So we want to just really say, and I have to say to you, I look at this turnout, I look at the love in the room. This is just love in the room. And I remember the first time I did this, my first administration, one of my first meetings. There wasn't this large a crowd, Tiger. We had about 5 people in the front. We had maybe five Black people right in the front, right about there. I said, is anybody else coming? Is this it? Are we open?
Yikes.
I don't even think Tim Scott, I know Turner wasn't there. I don't think Tim Scott was there either. I'm not sure. But that's all changed. And we got the highest vote. And one of the big reasons I'm president today is because of the Black vote. And I always appreciate it. So this is a very special time. It's Black History Month. We love you all. We're going to work with you. We're going to make America greater than ever before. We're going to do it together, and I want to thank you all for being here. It's an incredible honor. And to my great golfing friends, I want to thank them in particular because they really are. They make a lot of money. They don't have to be up here with me. Tiger doesn't have to be here. Adam doesn't have to. They don't need this, but they love you and they love our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you.
There it is.
States, Mr. J.D. Vance.
All right, so J.D. Vance is about to come out at the Munich Security Conference
United
here.
States.
Here it comes.
Mr. J.D. Vance, who was here last year as senator, and we are very happy that he has come back to Munich, and we are very much looking forward to his speech. Please welcome Vice President J.D. Vance.
I'm wondering how awkward this is going to get with all the tariffs flying around.
Well, thank you, and thanks to all the gathered delegates and luminaries and media professionals, and thanks especially to the host of the Munich Security Conference for being able to put on such an incredible event. We're, of course, thrilled to be here. We're happy to be here. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, you know, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, you know, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours. And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even as, of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with my wife, actually, who's here with me today, on a personal trip. And I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now,
okay.
I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security, and normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard.
Wow, he's not holding back at all.
And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic values. We must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not. And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Koran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder. And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief.
Oh my God.
And perhaps most concerningly,
they do not look happy at all.
I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own.
The balls on this guy.
And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law.
What?
Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
No applause. Barely. They look so pissed. Look at them.
Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even.
Sure.
But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
One dude.
Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way or, even worse, win an election.
God forbid.
Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger. But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we're defending in the first place? I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need Democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of Democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens.
I can't believe he's calling them out like this.
If you're going to enjoy competitive economies,
Jeez.
if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a Democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail, whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news. Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. Today,
you knew this was going to come up for sure.
Almost 1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone, and of course, it's gotten much higher since. And we know the situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction? No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children. And they're smart. I think this is one of the most important things I've learned in my brief time in politics. Contrary to what you might hear a couple mountains over in Davos, the citizens of all of our nations don't generally think of themselves as educated animals or as interchangeable cogs of a global economy. And it's hardly surprising that they don't want to be shuffled about or relentlessly ignored by their leaders.
Go figure.
And it is the business of democracy to adjudicate these big questions at the ballot box. I believe that dismissing people, dismissing their concerns, or worse yet, shutting down media, shutting down elections.
They are so pissed at this speech. They are so mad. The balls on J.D. Vance for calling them out.
Or shutting people out of the political process protects nothing. In fact, it is the most surefire way to destroy democracy. And speaking up and expressing opinions isn't election interference. Even when people express views outside your own country, and even when those people are very influential. And trust me, I say this with all humor, if American democracy can survive 10 years of Greta Thunberg scolding, you guys can survive a few months of Elon Musk. But what German democracy, what no democracy, American, German, or European, will survive is telling millions of voters that their thoughts and concerns, their aspirations, their pleas for relief are invalid or unworthy of even being considered. Democracy rests on the sacred principle.
Oh, look, he rolled his eyes. They're so mad.
That the voice of the people matters. There's no room for firewalls.
Jeez.
You either uphold the principle or you don't. Europeans, the people, have a voice. European leaders have a choice. And my strong belief is that we do not need to be afraid of the future. You can embrace what your people tell you, even when it's surprising, even when you don't agree. And if you do so, you can face the future with certainty and with confidence, knowing that the nation stands behind each of you. And that, to me, is the great magic of democracy. It's not in these stone buildings or beautiful hotels. It's not even in the great institutions that we have built together as a shared society. To believe in democracy is to understand that each of our citizens has wisdom and has a voice. And if we refuse to listen to that voice, even our most successful fights will secure very little. As Pope John Paul II, in my view, one of the most extraordinary champions of democracy on this continent or any other, once said, "Do not be afraid." We shouldn't be afraid of our people, even when they express views that disagree with their leadership. Thank you all. Good luck to all of you.
Wow.
God bless you.
That was not what I expected, but that was amazing. All right, I am going to go to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back, and I will continue with this video with Caroline. Okay. Yeah, that was amazing. I really didn't expect JD Vance to call them out like that. Thought it was going to be a normal speech, but kind of how things go. All right, I want to watch this video with Caroline here. Oop, not that. There we go, like that. Over a little bit. Got her in picture. Alrighty. So this is Caroline, our White House press briefer, being questioned on how she prepares for these briefings. A lot of people noticed immediately that she doesn't come out with a big notebook like the last person. So she's going to let us know how she prepares.
Tell us, okay, that first day, because I remember we were like, okay, it's Caroline Leavitt's first press briefing. How many of you people were watching out there?
I know I was definitely watching. I wanted to see just what she was going to be like, what she's going to talk about. Is she going to be like a big reflection of Trump, which is very true. I think she is definitely a big reflection of Trump.
So, of course, as the older sister, I'm like going, I better start praying right now. And we're both Catholic, so I'm like praying to like Mary, the saints, everybody else, Jesus. I'm like, Jesus, come on, just cover. When you walked into that White House press briefing room, now you were there beforehand as one of the press assistants, but this is different. This is like one of the most important jobs of the administration.
Well, not only that, she knows that she's just going to be attacked. Like that is her entire job, is to just take heat from the press, and they're going to say the nastiest things they can. They're going to try and trick her. They're going to call her out on things. And she's done a handful of them now so far, and I think she's doing really well.
How did you feel?
Yeah.
And what was your focus? Like, how did you know, okay, I'm ready, I mean business?
Yes. Well, there is extensive preparation that goes into each briefing, and I'm so blessed to have an amazing team at the White House who helps me prepare. I brought three of our big guns yesterday. We had Stephen Miller and Mike Waltz and Kevin Hassett join me at the podium to celebrate 1 month.
Yeah, I have that on my channel. That's probably the best press briefing that I've ever watched. One thing, if we're going to talk criticism of her, I don't think she does them as much. The last press briefer did sometimes 3 times a week, and she would do them on planes as well, which those weren't very good. I don't really want Caroline to bring those back. The reception was really bad, and it just wasn't, you know, I like video, come to the pulpit, that kind of thing. So I'm not worried about that, but I would like her to do more press briefings because there's a really quick turnaround in the news that's happening, especially when Trump is like doing 3 to 4 speeches a day. He's out there doing exactly what he said he was going to do. So there's a lot of news. There's a lot of updates, a lot of questions people want to ask. So I think she could probably do more. She's doing about 1 to 2 every week. So she could probably step that up.
And I lean on the policy experts in the building and, you know, to figure out what is fake news versus what is truth. So a lot of preparation, a lot of reading, talking to the president to understand his thinking. And then when I got to the podium, I realized the president is delivering on everything he said he was going to do, which makes my job as his spokeswoman easy, because I'm not working for a politician who's lying and we have to spin. I'm working for a man who said things and he's delivering on those things every day.
Okay.
Now, I remember, because I worked in the first administration, and the press secretary at the time, I was a strategic communications senior advisor for President Trump, and our press secretary at the time was now Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Okay.
Who will be on stage
It's a little weird clap that she just did there.
with me tomorrow. But I remember those exchanges between Sarah and this guy, let me remember his name, wait a second. The CNN guy, Jim Acosta? Oh wait, he's not on CNN anymore. That's right. He was like, it was just so, I would say, you don't mind the aggressive questions, you take the aggressive questions, but it was just always to the point that it was like, how do you destroy Donald Trump? How do you destroy the individuals of staff? It was so, when they do say Trump derangement syndrome, and I do think that there's also Elon Musk derangement syndrome happening too with the media, because they don't know how to handle it. How do you view that differently from the first administration till now?
I mean, that's their job, though. They're trying to get clicks. They want to get the most outrageous thing that they can think of, so people actually turn to their news source, which is just bad. I don't know. Do people really want to see that stuff anymore? Just constant, like, the world is ending every time they watch the news. I don't really. I'm not into that anymore. I want to know, like, actual facts, not how you're twisting things to be the end of the world. I don't think that's the news that people really want. But maybe it is, because I think they were probably generating a lot of money during that Trump era.
Because it was a lot of dealing with Russian hoax at the beginning, special counsels. It was constant because the media was trying so hard to, and they never apologized, right? They didn't apologize about the Russian hoax. Yeah, that's right. They didn't. So this.
No, it's back again. They're literally trying to take snapshots of people doing salutes and say that they are these kind of people. You know, they are trying to say that Trump favors Putin more. You know, they're trying to say that he's super pro-Russia and not taking into account that he just maybe wants to end the war. And he could be doing that for selfish reasons. He could be because he wants to be the guy that can say that he ended the war and then get that victory under his belt. But at the end of the day, if he's ending the war, who cares?
This time around, it's a very different strategy that you all are taking forward. What is that strategy?
Well, first of all, since you brought up Jim Acosta, he's been saying some not so nice things about me online, and I've resisted responding, but since you brought him up, I'd like to say
Let's go.
to Jim, at least I have a job, Jim, okay?
Damn.
Just saying.
There you go.
Moving on. As far as the strategy, we are on offense. We are on offense every single day, and the president leads from an offensive mindset. We are not going to apologize for cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from our government. We are not going to apologize for mass deporting illegal immigrant criminals who have broken our nation's laws and terrorized our communities. And we are not going to apologize for slashing regulations and undoing the disastrous policies of the previous administration. That's what the president said he was going to do. And that's what the
Absolutely. That's exactly what he said he was going to do. He didn't hide any of this.
majority of our fellow Americans want. The latest CBS poll, 70% of Americans say that President Trump is delivering on what he said he was going to do. So we're not going to apologize. We're going to keep moving ahead. And we try to bring that approach in our messaging every single day.
So I got to ask you, you're working all the time. These jobs are, when I tell you so demanding, they are so demanding. And I do feel that it is like,
I wonder how much she makes in a job like that. Just to take all of that pressure, all of the backlash, everything. I wonder what kind of money they're giving her.
warp speed what you're dealing with, even more so than we saw in the first administration. How do you get the strength to just get through every single day?
My faith in God, absolutely. Waking up every day and just remembering I'm blessed, and we're all blessed to live in this country and to have a president who is looking out for us every day. Family support. And our team at the White House, we really have a great team. And you talked about how the media tried to cause so much division within the White House in the first term. They're trying to do it, but I think they're failing. They are not getting away with it because we truly have such great camaraderie. And the people I work with every day, they're friends and we're together. 18 hours a day. So you gotta like who you're around. But we truly are having fun and we're getting work done. And again, the president is leading with that positive, happy warrior attitude. And it transpires to the rest of the White House every day.
And
Yeah. All right. Well, there she is. Just figured I would catch this real quick and see what he was saying here about Kamala.
open border, our border czar was Kamala. Haven't said that name in a while. I haven't said that name. No, I haven't said that name in a while. Kamala. I'll bet nobody knows her last name. Nobody ever knows her last name. Even during the campaign, you'd have to say Kamala. It's strange, you know, a little different name. Kamala, because her last name was Harris. I used to say Senator Harris. Nobody knew who the hell I was talking about. So I had to go Kamala. But think of it, I was beating Joe badly, really badly, and they changed him. I'm the only one that ever had to beat two people. I had to beat two. Had to beat two. We beat two. I didn't beat. You beat. You beat two people. No, he was doing badly. That's like the great Dana White. He has a fight, and one guy's doing really badly, so when they take him out, they put another guy in to fight, the same guy that's... I had that.
Jeez. All right, I think I'm going to cut it for today. Thank y'all for